Good morning and welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR, and we are very happy this morning that we are joined by Stephen Costello. He is the Chief Recovery Officer for the City of Houston. As we all know, we are in hurricane season and flood is at the top of most of our minds. So we're very excited that you could join us this morning. Thank you so much for being here, Stephen.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. I know you have some great resources and information to share, as well as some history of things that have happened over the last few years. So we're excited to hear about that. But before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've been on this program before, but it has been probably about 4 years since we had you on. So tell us a little bit about yourself for our members.
Sure. So I originally come from private practice. I had an engineering firm called Costello Inc. In fact, it's still in business now. And back in 2010, I became a city council member, an at-large council member. So I was an at-large council member for 6 years. And then I actually ran against Mayor Turner for mayor. And after being defeated and going back to my engineering company, the mayor called me and said he wanted me to come work for him. And so over a period of about 4 months, we were trying to figure out how I could help him in his administration. So I left my firm, sold my firm back to my partners. And so I've been the Chief Recovery Officer now for probably a little over 7 years. And so it's been entertaining and challenging dealing with state and federal officials, but it's been somewhat rewarding since I'm in the twilight of my career.
Absolutely. So, I mean, obviously this sounds like a very important role to the city, and we're so happy that you took that role 7 years ago. Tell us a little bit about what that role is and what your office does.
Sure. So what the mayor asked us to do, since we're part of his administrative staff, is to be the interface between the internal departments that deal with flooding and drainage, whether it's planning, permitting, public works, and then also be the interface externally to the city, which is dealing with our county partners, which is Flood Control District or Harris County Engineering, or dealing with state officials and federal officials. So we're the in-between. We don't produce the work. We sort of help bring money into the departments and then distribute those monies. And then we become the irritants. We push. And that's our goal, is to try to push projects out as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. Much needed projects. So we appreciate that push that your office gives. So I know one of the goals is to help with recovery and achieve resiliency. Can you tell us, what do those terms really mean to you, recovery and resiliency, as they relate to flooding?
So it's interesting, when the mayor first asked me to come on board, he said, I want you to be the Chief Resiliency Officer. And I went, oh, what is that? I have no idea. And so to me, resiliency was more about planning, and I'm an engineer, I'm a builder. And so I was the resiliency officer until we finally hired a true resiliency officer, a lady by the name of Marissa Aho, who came from LA and helped the city create our resiliency plan. When she came on board, I transitioned over to recovery. And at that time, it was just immediately post Hurricane Harvey. So I've really ideally been working on recovery from Hurricane Harvey. What most people don't realize is when you have an event as large as Harvey occurring, it takes years to recover. And so we're in the 6th year. I mean, this year is the 6th. Next month will be 6 years post Hurricane Harvey. We probably will spend another 10 years in dealing with federal resources and state resources to complete our Harvey recovery. So it's just a long process. And ideally, what I'm just focusing on is flooding and drainage.
Okay.
And so that's really what we're working on right now in this group.
Excellent. So next month, you said 6 years since Hurricane Harvey. What flood control projects have been completed since that time?
Yeah, so it's, I would encourage your viewers to go on the city's website, recovery.houston.org, recovery.houston.gov. And you'll see on there a 5-year report. It's a summary of what we have done over the last 5 years, cumulative, since Hurricane Harvey. And so I'll just quote a few of these for y'all. 42 capital improvement projects, 218 local drainage projects that about $41 million investment, 156 what we call SWAT projects, which is Stormwater Action Team projects, over $70 million. Five large scale, what we call CIP projects, which is those are the projects that take 4 to 8 years to finish. We spent over $33 million. We've spent over $70 million buying land for regional detention. Most people don't realize that. We have very limited green space in the city of Houston. So wherever we can find space to buy and use for regional detention, that's what we do. In fact, what we just did last year was we bought an old apartment complex where people were still living there. We spent $38 million. We cost shared that with Harris County to buy a 500 unit apartment complex in Greens Point area that was in the floodway. And so we bought it. We're currently still relocating people that were living there. We're going to clear the site, and flood control is going to build a regional basin there. So overall, we've spent probably in the last 5 years, probably somewhere north of $300 million in flood control projects. In addition to all the dredging work I'm doing up in Lake Houston, with state and federal funds, we've spent over $200 million just in dredging alone to help those people up in the Kingwood area. What I talk a lot about in terms of flooding and drainage is prior to Harvey, the community really took flooding and drainage kind of for granted. And the reason why was we were getting floods like every 5 or 6 years, and it would only impact a small amount of our community. And then 2 years later, whoever flooded was back to their lives, but 95% of the city didn't experience flooding. And then you go 15, we had 2 floods, 16, and then you had Harvey, where Harvey impacted the whole community. And now everyone, even 6 years post the event, are still saying we need to continue to invest in flooding and drainage, which is, by and large, it's unfortunate that we had to have a Harvey event to get that mindset for the community, but that's what we have now.
Absolutely. I mean, I know you're saying 6 years next month, but I'm sure our realtor members that are tuned in hear these questions from their clients and customers every day. You know, did this neighborhood flood during Harvey? I would love to hear some comments. If anybody tuned in hears that question from their clients often, because it is fresh on people's mind and they want to live somewhere that they feel safe and comfortable. So it's wonderful to hear that all of those projects have been completed in those 6 years. And again, we shared the link in the comments for people to go and review that so you can get more familiar with some of those projects that may have taken place in your area. Could you tell us what flood control or mitigation projects are currently in the works?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you recall back a couple of months ago, the CDBG mitigation funds that came down from HUD was given $750 million was given to Harris County. The city didn't get any of those funds. However, we work very closely with Harris County. So just recently, last month, Harris County Flood Control District presented a list of projects to Commissioner's Court. They approved those. Over $175 million of future investment in our community, it's directly inside the city limits, is going to be projects that are going to help Sunnyside, Cashmere Gardens, some of these underserved communities that desperately need some help. And then also right now, there's another tranche of money in Harris County Engineering that's about ready to come out, and over $75 million of those projects will be within the city limits. Now, the difference between flood control projects and Harris County projects is the flood control projects will be digging the channels. So we need improved channels so that we can bring our storm sewer systems to drain to them. The Harris County funds will be helping us build those storm sewer systems, again, serving some of these underserved neighborhoods. So just from their tranche of money, it's going to be north of $250 million. And the city is still currently investing another $100 million up in the Lake Houston watershed for continuing drainage and dredging problems. And then we still have 4 hazard mitigation grant projects that we were awarded by FEMA post Hurricane Harvey. Total of $300 million in investment, both state and local monies. And those projects are, and I'll just go quickly. One project is rebuilding new gates at Lake Houston Dam to allow us to lower the dam in advance of a flood. The second project, which is really a marquee project, is a diversion canal downstream in downtown Houston. That's the largest mitigation project that the state got awarded from the federal government. The third project is the one that's under construction. It's a conversion of a golf course to regional detention up in the White Oak Bayou area. It's called Inwood Forest. That one is under construction. And then the fourth project is a subterranean detention basin in the Memorial City area. So we're real excited. We have probably over $1 billion of investment over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's exciting times.
That's great. And it sounds like it's spread around to different areas. One thing that you mentioned a couple times is that you're working with the county as well. So can you tell us a little bit about that collaboration between the city and other entities like Harris County?
Yeah, so most residents don't realize how much collaboration there is between these agencies. And that's really primarily one of my roles. And so we want to leverage dollars. And if you think about it, county residents are city residents, and city residents are county residents. So we have the same client base, and so we understand the needs. And so, but remember now, the county is twice the size of the city, and so they still have to recognize that they have investments outside the city that they have to deal with. So our goal is to try to maximize how much money they invest in the city, and their goal is to try to keep us happy at the same time. And so we have a good working relationship, staff to staff, and good working relationship between administration to administration. So it's good that we're able to leverage dollars, and that's what we need to happen, both in terms of when we're using state funds and when we're using federal funds. I think the interesting challenge that we've had over the years is having the state help us funding as well. And if you recall, just this past legislative session, the city was able to get the state to give us another $50 million for this Lake Houston Dam gate structure that we're going to build. So that's a first. That's really the first time we've been able to get the state to do some good investments for us.
Absolutely. I'm sure anybody tuned in from that area or that represents clients in that area is very happy about that. So if you have questions, if you are tuned in and you have questions for Stephen Costello, please type those into the comments and we will get to as many questions as we can. I do have a question, just kind of going back to Hurricane Harvey a little bit, if you don't mind. What lessons do you feel the city of Houston learned from Hurricane Harvey?
Well, I think we're better prepared for an event like Harvey. If you recall, I remember being in the emergency ops room 2 days after Harvey, and we were trying to get some flood control temporary dams out to our water plant down on the east side of town, and all the roads were flooded. All the major highways were flooded. We literally couldn't get out of the city. And so I think we're recognizing the fact that even though we're trying to take care of flooding and drainage, there's a transportation component relative to this issue about being able to get around town. The other issue is that our emergency ops is well prepared now for an event as large as Harvey. Also, we have what most people don't realize is when an event occurs, FEMA is there right away to help. But what the cities have to do is make sure that you have pre-positioned contracts in place in case of an event. And that includes not only what we would call debris pickup, which would be contractors, but also engineering firms that help us in our grant administrative types part. So we've made sure that we have those contracts in place, and they're just sitting there. It's not like they're working. They're just there in case we need them. So I think we're better prepared, and we spent a lot of time working on those preparations and practicing those preparations. And then that's just in the emergency ops side. On the flooding and drainage side in public works, we continue to focus on these areas that do have flooding problems. And it's not just regional flooding problems, it's what we call urban flooding problems. And what I remind everybody when, particularly someone who's buying a home, don't just look at a flood insurance rate map and you see you're out of the floodplain and say, oh, I'm safe from flooding. That's not the case. And Harvey proved that because Mother Nature can give us any type of flood. The maps are designed really to show a risk assessment, but also we could get flooding from inadequate urban infrastructure, which is what the city's role is to take care of. And so I remember this was years ago when I first took this position. I was out, we would go public speaking with the director of Harris County Flood Control District. His name was Russ Poppy. And before our presentation started, we would stand up and we'd say, how many of y'all know what watershed you live in? And you'd be surprised. Less than 25% knew what watershed they lived in and what the flood potential could be. How many of y'all have flood insurance? Less than 40% of the audience didn't have flood insurance. And so that's probably the one recommendation I tell everybody is to go out and get flood insurance, make sure you know where you live, and then make sure that you have a evacuation plan in case of an event. And normally when hurricanes come, we have plenty of time to prepare, like 5 days, usually out when the city starts the emergency ops. That's when the individual resident needs to say, okay, am I going to leave? Am I going to stay? If I'm going to stay, how do I prepare? Things like that. So I think Harvey really kind of shed some light on some of the issues that we as a community need to address, and I think we're doing that well now.
Okay. So I think you kind of answered my next question a little bit, but just love to hear from you. How prepared do you feel that the city of Houston is for a next potential storm or flood event?
Well, the risk that you have is you really don't know where it's going to occur. And so we have areas of the city that are more flood prone than other areas. I think the issue, for instance, like when Harvey occurred and you look at the area south, which is the Sims Bayou area, there was very little flooding down there because Sims Bayou was recently completed as a federal project. And so we continue to advocate for increased capacity in the more regional detention facilities, the more regional, what we call the conveyance facilities. And at the same time, we are working to make sure that we can get the water that's coming in from the city into these bayous as quickly as possible. There's always the risk that Mother Nature will decide differently. Like for instance, in Imelda was just up in the Kingwood area. No other place got flooded. Or if you go back to 2015, it was concentrated first down in the Brays Bayou area, and then on a little further down, the second time it occurred, it was down by Sunnyside. So it's never overall. And so you just have to prepare as much as you can to anticipate where it's going to occur. The other thing that we've been excited about is that Harris County Flood Control District has an early warning system, and it's in its like third or fourth generation, and it's a predictor model. And so what we're all encouraging the community at large to do is to take a look at the early warning system. If the city or the county is telling everyone, hey, anticipate this, and take heed to those requests. So we're excited about the early warning system, and I think it'll work well internally within the city.
Excellent, thank you. So you already mentioned one big, very, very important thing, which was flood insurance. We recently heard a statistic that less homeowners have flood insurance now than they did during Hurricane Harvey. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but we did hear that. So with those things in mind, what advice can realtors give their clients and customers in regard to flooding and just protecting their properties?
Well, I think the issue of flood insurance is really, really important because God forbid that your house should get flooded. And if you don't have flood insurance, then FEMA will only come in and help you with what is called individual assistance, IA assistance. And that is maxed up to about $30,000. And then if you accept individual assistance, then you have to maintain flood insurance in perpetuity for that particular site. It's important to have flood insurance because $30,000 does not go very well, especially where you have homes that are in the $1 million range. So, I mean, the average price of home, I think, in the city of Houston is somewhere north of $350,000. And so it's really, really important to have flood insurance in anticipation of those particular issues, because it's problematic for you if you don't have flood insurance. And like I said, when everyone looks at a map and sees they're not in a floodplain, they think they're safe. They shouldn't think that way. They should be thinking in terms of risk. And so that's why we believe and we continue to advocate for flood insurance.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not a cure-all.
Yeah.
It's just a safety factor for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Great comment that just came in from Britt. She said, my clients talk to their insurance agent before we even put in an offer on a home. It's crazy how much the rates could vary and absolutely kill a deal. So it's what the most important thing I'm hearing there is that Britt is talking about this with her clients and encouraging them to speak with somebody, a professional, about insurance before they even put in an offer. I think that's excellent.
Yeah, well, so here's the issue. So what most people don't realize is the National Flood Insurance Program has been subsidized by the federal government since its creation in the 70s. And so what FEMA has done just recently is they did what is called a Risk 2.0. And they decided to take and evaluate the risk associated with flooding based on where you're located in the floodplain and based on how high the water level is that could reach. And that's creating significant problems for people that are wanting to buy a house that may be in the floodplain. And so, the issue is you could be living in a floodplain, but as long as your structure is above that flood level, your risk is less, so you won't be paying as much. But if you're in a floodplain and you're still subject to those higher levels, those flood insurance rates do go very high. And so, and in fact, what my understanding is on the adjustments, FEMA is allowing an incremental adjustment over a couple of years before you get to the actual risk that you're going to pay. But yeah, it could be significant particularly for a young couple trying to get in to a particular house, or significant for a fixed income couple who doesn't have any choice but to take care of the flood insurance.
Okay, thank you for that. Whenever we have anyone from a government agency on this program, we like to ask this question because, as you know, our members are spread out all over every community in the Houston and surrounding areas, talking to people every day. So how can realtors help the city achieve the goal of flood resiliency?
Well, you are the front line for a homeowner. All right, and I think realtors need to continue to advocate for flood protection, need to advocate for helping us elevate homes, or in fact we have a program where we're elevating homes with federal resources, and so it's helpful to do that because there's going to be certain areas of the city where we can't build infrastructure big enough or deep enough to prevent them from flooding. And so those are some of the challenges that we have. But I think just helping inform the buyer about where they're moving to and what are the challenges that you have there is really, really important, especially since we are continuing to get a lot of people moving into the Houston area that are not from this area. And they don't realize the significance of flooding. They don't realize the significance of a hurricane. And so it's something new to them. And so we think we need to make sure that someone is at least educating them on the challenges that we have in our communities. Now, mind you, we don't want to prevent them from moving to an area. We don't want that. We just want to make sure that they're informed.
Great. Thank you for that. We had a question come in that I'm so glad that they asked this because I really think that we need to know. Shiva said, is there any way we can find information as to what's going to happen for flood control in a specific area. So is there a place that we can see what projects have already been completed and what projects are on the docket, if you will?
Yeah, so on the City of Houston's website, I would suggest there's two things you can go to. It's called Engage, Engage, Houston.org. That's Public Works' website. And you can see all the projects that Public Works is working on that website. It's really a good website. You can click on specific projects. And then in terms of the Harvey recovery, remember it's recovery.houston.gov. You can see our 5-year report. That was last August's report. We haven't updated it yet for this year. And then go on Harris County Flood Control District's website. And they have a great website for two reasons. One is to see the projects that they're working on. And the other is that what is called MAP Next, which is the program that Flood Control is doing to redo all of our flood insurance rate maps in the community. There is a timeline on there. Those maps actually are in preliminary form and they're with FEMA right now for review. They'll come out for public consumption sometime, I think, near the end of this year or early January. So those are the two websites I would concentrate on. If you're in Montgomery County, Fort Bend County, or Galveston County, I would refer you to their engineering departments and see, they'd be able to help you with whatever they're working on as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. And just as an announcement, you mentioned Harris County Flood Control District and their website. We will, to our viewers, we will have Jeff Lindner with Harris County Flood Control District on this program in just a few weeks. Actually, he'll be on this program in early August. So we'll hear some updates from him as well. Just a question kind of going back to how realtors can help. If they're kind of reviewing some of these resources and seeing the different projects taking place, and they maybe know of a trouble spot or something like that, how can they bring that to your attention or to the attention of your department? Yeah,
so if you're in a floodplain, then obviously we have a floodplain manager's office within the city engineer's office. A lot of the challenges that we find residents have is trying to navigate their way through the city system. And what I would encourage your viewers to do, and don't take advantage of it, if you have an area that you think is problematic, go ahead and send me the email. And I'll be able to forward it to the right department and the right person. One of the issues that I always tell everybody is, if you're calling me with a problem, send me an email. We need a paper trail. And that's always very helpful. And then it's usually what I'll do is I will first send it to the necessary department, but also copy the district council member, because it's important that the district council members get a better understanding of what's happening in their community. And they might not be aware of what you're identifying because, particularly if it's a smaller type project that we could fix in less than a year, then we would use SWAT funds or we would use local drainage project funding. And on the SWAT side, the council members have a say in those projects on an annual basis. So if it's an isolated problem, then I can give it the attention of the council member. That would be very helpful, and they would appreciate that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. I wanted to just share a couple comments that have come in. Tammy just said flood insurance has definitely become more expensive. She encourages a common sense approach with her clients. Basically all these different factors, but she always tells them to consider getting flood insurance. And another comment that just came in from Judith, she said this is an excellent substantive interview on such an important topic that affects us all. So thank you, and we truly do appreciate you sharing your insight with us this morning. With that, though, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I said it was my pleasure. I enjoyed talking to you.
Absolutely. So with that, though, is there anything else that you want to share with our members today? Anything that we didn't get to cover, or just some parting thoughts that you want to share with our members?
Well, so it was in the paper this past weekend about the challenges we've had with Rebuild Houston and the funding of Rebuild Houston, the challenges on revenue cap. the city moving forward is going to have a lot of challenges, but bear in mind, before Rebuild Houston was created in 2010, the city's investment in drainage was less than $50 million. And now it's multiples of that, to the tune of $200 to $300 to $400 million, and it's projected to grow. So it's exciting times that we now have money available for infrastructure funding. It's just a matter of how we prioritize it. Our need is very large because we've got 620 square miles. But I would encourage your members to reach out to the city whenever there are problems that they observe, and also reach out to the council members because they would like to know as well.
Okay, thank you so much. One final comment that came in that I just have to share with you that I think will probably be a great start to your week. It says, glad Houston has Stephen Costello leading the city's recovery department. Clearly, he's a highly qualified leader and a man of action, and I strongly agree. We truly thank you for all the work that you've done in for the city of Houston, and especially in this role in the last 6 years.
That'd be great. I appreciate that. Are you sure it wasn't my wife that sent that note?
I don't think so. Well, very good. Well, thank you again for your time today. I really appreciate it. That is actually it for this Member Focus Monday, but be sure to tune in next Monday at 9 a.m. We are going to be discussing everything that we need to know about video marketing with HAR's Director of Video Services, Claudia Hernandez. So tune in to get all your video questions answered next week. Stephen, thank you again for your time. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.